Everyone.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome to our 15-part series, Initiation into Mystery. We're in part 3 today. We're going to look at the Nativity, and we're going to look at another really interesting strategy for kind of mysteries that you can use with them. Please feel free to share your comments, questions, experiences, stories, anything you want in the comments. This will remain up after we finish, and you can also continue to have a conversation when we're done. So, ready to jump in?
Sure. I mean, the Nativity is such a familiar mystery. I mean, arguably it may be the most familiar mystery to a lot of people. Mary and Joseph try to find a place to give birth to Jesus, and they're turned away from the end, and they find a place in a little grotto, almost kind of a cave-like area for feeding animals.
In Bethlehem, and Mary gives birth. We all know it from Christmas plays, and yet what's real, there are a lot of interesting things going on. And in some ways, it's the most well-known mystery and the mystery that holds some of the biggest, most interesting secrets.
Yeah.
What we want to talk about today is a strategy with the mysteries that Mary Gard has actually been using in her novena post these past 6 days. And it's really, really helpful. And what she has done is she has layered the mysteries one on top of the other. And what that does is she sort of let the first mysteries, the first joyous mystery, the first sorrowful mystery, the first glorious mystery, have a conversation with each other. And today what we thought we would do is let the Nativity is the third joyous mystery, have a conversation with the third sorrowful mystery and the third glorious mystery, because then they sort of begin to dance together. And Our Lady has said time and space are not linear. They're folded over each other, sort of like origami. And when we begin to play with the mysteries this way, we can begin to unlock things inside of ourselves and inside of the mysteries.
Okay, so first things first. One of the biggest misconceptions about the Nativity is that when the child is born, he's laid in a manger. Most people think the manger refers to the little hut, right? Like the crèche scene that you see. The manger is actually a trough. The word means a food trough. Okay, for feeding animals. This is where the grain is put for feeding cows and other animals, right? Horses. So Jesus is born and laid in a manger, a food trough for animals. So if there ever were a great ecological symbol in Christianity, this is it. It basically says that whatever eats is also eaten, that we're born into this world where we eat
as food.
As food. We ourselves are food.
The wheat that is born becomes our food.
Right.
The small bunnies that are being born in my neighborhood right now are becoming food for owls, food for hawks.
Yeah.
The acorns that fell in great abundance last fall are food for the chipmunks, and the chipmunks become food for the hawks.
Yeah. This is the first rule of ecology. Whatever eats is also eaten. The world is a unitary system, one great body in which everything is consuming everything. Everything is dying and also being born.
So that is in some ways in Jesus's great teaching, which becomes the Eucharist, the sacred meal. And what he's really saying is not sort of hocus pocus magic, I'm turning the bread into my body. What he's saying is everything we eat is the body of the world, and our bodies are the body of the world, and we in turn are going to become eaten. To extricate ourselves from that equation has created such radical imbalances in the world.
Yeah, to violate that first law is basically to jump our niche and stop living like animals, right? And define ourselves apart from the world and define ourselves as the masters of the world.
Now, there is so much in this mystery. We know it from thousands of Christmas plays, and it's a really good example of what's happening in scripture and what's happening in legend.
Right.
Because if you go back to the scripture, it's really spare. But the legends around this mystery are so vast, and we think they're the real story. For instance, we would never imagine depicting the Nativity without animals.
No, they're
They
there in every painting, in every story.
the cows, the sheep, the donkeys. You know, my favorite Christmas play in Love Actually is, they also have the Christmas lobsters there, the Christmas penguins. I mean, there's so much with this. The Christmas mice. It's somehow, and some of that is that it's a children's story, but some of it is also a reminder that in this mystery, if we're thinking of the mysteries of deep time, we are still animals in this
Right.
story.
And the grotto, the cave, right, in the story is very much like those Paleolithic caves where the walls are filled with pictures of animals. So this is a very ancient scene. Mary gives birth in this grotto and lays her child in a manger, and she's really Our Lady of the Beasts, right? This is one of the oldest names for Our Lady that goes back tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of
One
thousands
of
of
the things I
years.
find so fascinating is that in India, when the Lord and Lady come together, Shiva and
Mhm.
Parvati, they have a child, Horus. And Horus is part human, and through a series of accidents, he also has an animal head. He has an elephant head.
You mean Isis and Osiris have Horus?
Oh no, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Shiva and
Ganesha. Shiva
Parvati
and
have
Parvati
Ganesha,
have
who's an
Ganesha,
elephant.
who's an elephant.
The
Sorry.
basic point is that this
Isis
couple,
and Isis and Osiris have a child
yeah,
who has a hawk head.
yeah,
All of these animal children of the Lord and Lady are reminders that we are animals. And there
right,
is nothing different in this mystery.
right.
That is the big thing we're being taught. What the wisdom of the animals in this
Right.
mystery.
So there are that's the sort of the first layer, the basic mystery. The interesting thing is when we start talking about layering the mysteries, if you once you start to pray the mysteries day after day and you start to get used to that placement of the mysteries, oh, I'm on the first mystery now, I'm on the second mystery. Part of your mind remembers what the other second mysteries and third mysteries are. And you begin to see that they have things in common, that there's a kind of an interesting unfolding story. Take the three central mysteries of the rosary, the ones that occupy this third position. The first is the Nativity, okay? The second is the crown of thorns. And the third, in the glorious mysteries, is the descent of the Holy Spirit. What do these three have in common? Crowns. The baby's head crowns in the first mystery, right?
That
The
is
mystery of birth.
for those who may not know, crowning is the moment when the baby's head appears in the birth canal.
Hmm.
And you see the baby crowning. It's come through the cervix and it's ready to emerge. And the baby is literally crowned by the mother's vulva and by her body.
Yeah.
That is the first crown. That's Jesus's first crown. The first crown he wears is the crown of his mother's body.
Right, right. And the second crown is the crown of thorns, the crown of suffering that Jesus wears. And even that crown is very complex. It's not exactly what it seems because it's a crown of thorns, right? This harkens back to the tradition going back tens of thousands of years, whereby in the springtime, devotees of Our Lady would weave her crowns of roses, right, for her head. So the flowers are gone and only the thorns remain. And this is placed on Jesus's head at the crucifixion. This is the sort of perverse crown that we force ourselves to wear and force upon one another in the name of order or justice or progress or more food or surpluses or power, whatever. And literally in the story, the crown is actually forced onto Jesus's head. It's not set on his head, it's pushed down to make him
And
suffer.
it's very interesting to begin to explore crowns archaeologically, historically. Where do the ideas of wearing a crown come from? What does it have to do with the crown chakras?
Yeah,
Why these flower wreaths for the lady? Why the need for these gold crowns for kings or crowns of laurel leaves, which were sacred to the goddess as a sign of victory?
right.
And Jesus is being mocked for being a devotee of the goddess,
Yeah, yeah.
for daring to wear her crown.
In that mystery, which we'll talk about later, we're not going to
Yeah.
spend too much time on it now. But in that mystery, he's given a scarlet robe, okay, the color of the goddess. And he's given a reed scepter, a reed, which is another symbol of the goddess. The character
Mm-hmm.
actually for Na's name is two reeds bending towards one another.
Mm-hmm. So we have those crowns, and then we get to our third crown, and it's the crown that happens with the descent of the goddess at Pentecost. And literally everybody in this upper room with who's there with Miriam has a flame light up on the top of their head, and they are crowned.
It's the crown chakra.
The crown chakra
Right.
becomes activated. It's as if all the chakras activate.
The Kundalini energy, that goddess energy, is activated within all of them, and suddenly they can handle snakes, they can heal the sick, they can speak in a variety of different languages, they can communicate directly from the heart to other people.
The lady crowns them.
Yeah.
And it is the lady's crown that we're constantly looking at and exploring in this third mystery. One of the characters I find most fascinating in the Nativity, there's so much happening in the Nativity. And I think that it's a mystery. You know, the women love telling, who've given birth, love telling the stories of their labors and delivery. Every year on my children's birthday, I tell them the story of when I gave birth to them. It is a sacred story for me to tell. And I think a lot of women feel that way. These stories of
And men
birth.
too. I love to tell the story of,
I
I was
know.
there for both of our children's births.
He most certainly was. And 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 Miriam's midwife is Joseph. There is a man who has stepped up to the plate in ways we don't even understand. Wait for my daughter's book. Wonderful portrait of Joseph. But here's this man who steps up. He's rescued this woman from being stoned to death, risked his own humiliation by standing by her. And then he does something which for a Jewish man of his day would be quite extraordinary. He is her midwife.
Right.
He handles the blood. He sees her.
He assists in the birth. Yeah.
He assists in the birth.
There's no one else there to help.
There's no, and that role, Clark once wrote beautifully about Joseph, is that Joseph is the birth of mercy into the world. He is the man who says, forget about patriarchy's rules coming and going. I'm going to stand by this woman, and I'm going to play the part of a woman in this story. And I can play a part of a woman in this story. And it's very moving, right? And so we see this. There's just a lot to unlock here. What does it mean?
Yeah. And it's a very rich story. It's one of those, most of the Rosary Mysteries are taken from the Gospel of Luke, but this is one of those stories that overlays with the other Gospels. And so there's a lot of legend, there's a lot of lore, and there's even a lot of scripture about it. So there are the angels calling the shepherds arriving. There is another mystery that sometimes included among the seven joys, the adoration of the Magi. In some traditions, that's seen as happening a few days after the birth, before the family is moved on. And some, it happens that very night, later that night after the shepherds arrive, the wise men arrive. In the most crèche scenes at Christmas time, you'll see the wise men there as well.
And we all have these sentimental feelings about, I think a lot of us have sentimental feelings. I use our family's crèche that I had as a little girl. I used to love to play with it. I came from a completely non-religious family, and yet we had a crèche scene. And yet Christmas was, and all those Christmas carols about the Nativity. So many of them that we sang. But here's the weird thing about this mystery. And this is what I want to take a look at, because sometimes we have to peel them back a little bit. If we're talking about the birth of joy and the cultivation of our heart's desire and the bringing of joy into the world, it does not necessarily happen as we imagine it is going to happen.
No, nothing goes as planned, and yet everything is perfect.
Nothing goes as planned. I'm sure Miriam thought she was going to give birth with her mother, Anna, and her cousin Elizabeth, with the women she knew around her serving as midwife, in her home, in her community, in her
Yeah.
own bed.
And meanwhile, the threads of destiny are being woven by forces greater than any one player in this drama. Meanwhile, the wise men are themselves.
Yes.
I lost something here.
I'm just screaming so we don't have any questions. Yes.
uh, Go back to
There we go.
yeah,
Yeah.
thanks. Meanwhile, the wise men are following a different set of coordinates. Miriam expects to, be with her midwife, to be with her family, to have a place, a safe, easy, clean place to give birth. She ends up in the stable. The wise men are headed to the stable all along, right? The shepherds are headed to the stable, to the
It,
grotto. So it all converges on this
but
moment.
it doesn't look like she imagines. It looks like it's
No,
a catastrophe.
but it's
What a
all
catastrophe.
that's right. But it's all been orchestrated. It's all been set up.
So
Everything is in
they
place.
have to be on the move. They have to be headed to Bethlehem. They get there. There's there at the end. She's going into labor. We don't know if she's early. I mean, nothing goes as planned. And this is the big lesson of praying the rosary that we get, that we are part of a story way bigger than we understand. And that very frequently we have, I mean, I keep saying this to Clark, this is a refrain we say a lot is, how is this an answer to a prayer?
Right.
Sometimes it looks like it's a catastrophe.
Yeah.
How is this
And the only way to
exactly where we're supposed
and
to
and,
be?
and the wisdom of these mysteries is that you don't get stuck anywhere. They this is you're stepping on to a carousel and it's moving. Life is in motion. And so we go from one mystery to the next to the next. And at each step of the way, we say, how is this an answer to my prayer? How is this advancing the story? How is this carrying me through sorrow? Sometimes that's the only question we can ask in certain very dark moments is how is this moment, this thing that's happening now that's so difficult to bear, how is this a footstep carrying me along the path through sorrow, finally to glory?
And it invites us to give birth to creativity, to art, to joy, to life, however it is we need to bring forth life from within us. And when we do, even though we're having in a stable, in a grotto, in a place we don't know, we're where we don't know, we don't have anyone around what we thought, there's no layout around, there's no
There's no
bassinet,
money.
there's
There's
no
no...
nothing. It's a mess. Suddenly we're recognized for who we
Yeah,
are.
that's right.
Suddenly we become recognized. Suddenly the shepherds know who we are, the angels know who we are, the wise men come.
Yeah,
Everybody's ready to celebrate us when we step into this moment.
right.
And this is the fulfillment of that first mystery.
And this, in the sort of traditional way of saying the rosary advanced by Louis de Montfort, there's a virtue associated with each of the mysteries that you sort of reflect on. And the one for this one is detachment from the world and humility. And yet, look what happens when they say, okay, we're doing this here. Suddenly, kings arrive with great riches, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly the shepherds arrive, angels are there, animals on all sides. So there's this sense of unfolding wonder and blessing that the moment we embrace the mystery and participate in it and see ourselves as being on a path, the path of joy in this case, then the circumstances align themselves to support us in that journey.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, it does awaken our hearts. I mean, Christmas is a wonderful time of year, and we celebrate this idea that anything becomes possible. And I also think about I think about those Christmases we had one Christmas years ago, a couple, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago. Things were pretty bleak. I didn't quite know how we are going to pull off Christmas. Um, and so I had this idea. I thought, I've got to make something special. So that was the year, of course, I made these albums, memory albums for my children of all their artwork and photos of them.
Mm, mm.
And of course, it was the thing they treasure. Of course, it was the best present ever. Of course, it was the most fun Christmas ever. And of course, so many of the Christmas stories are about that. We don't seem to have anything, but Pa comes back with 2 pieces of candy and we all make it work. And somehow that is at the heart of this mystery, I think, which is the world looks like it's not going right. everything looks like it's falling to bits and pieces and going wrong. And our challenge at that moment is to say, how is this absolutely perfect? What must have happened? We don't know much about Miriam and Joseph because we haven't read Sophie's book yet. But
You're shameless. Proud parent here.
Please say prayers for it if you would. It's out in the world. It's out with editors right now. Um, and I will tell you a secret. Her agent said, I don't know about the gospel, she said, but wow, this story, this is a story. So anyway, but Joseph, what happened to the intimacy of their marriage? Suddenly they're thrown in this strange thing. She's decided to have a baby without a husband. She's risked being stoned
She's
to death.
enlisted a husband, basically.
And then Joseph
Gotten a
steps up and says,
volunteer. I'll do this.
I'll do this, I'll marry you, I'll keep you from being stoned to death. And he steps up, and we don't know much about their relationship, but he shares with her, unlike men of the period, the intimacy of this moment. He becomes her midwife.
Mm.
And how do we become each other's midwife? How do we help each other? How do we become like Joseph and step up into roles that may seem very uncomfortable for us to be midwives for each other in the world?
We have some sort of wonderful comments and questions here, and so we'll just sort of scroll through them very briefly. Um, Michelle Ryan says, I just read this today, apropos Walt Whitman, from the head of the center figure spreading a nimbus of gold-colored light, but I paint myriads of heads, but pain no head without its nimbus of golden-colored light. Yeah, so actually, it's about that layering of the great joy and the great sorrow and the great glory of those three crowns.
It is, and it can be a lot of fun to, this is a mantra for me. Someone said, how is this an answer to a prayer? Right now, that is the work of this moment. We're being challenged in a lot of ways. Some of us are being challenged way more than others. But
you mean the COVID-19?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the prayer of the earth, I think, and the prayer of a lot of animals right now is that they'll be given a brief respite, at least, to sort of, catch their breath. Species are disappearing everywhere. Human beings seem like they're under attack. There's nothing compared to what's being experienced in the natural world right now, with so many species going extinct every day. Ice caps melting, polar bears not being able to find any place to eat, anything to eat, or any place even to live. And this is a story all over the planet. We can't stop ourselves, and so the planet, Our Lady is giving us a kind of a timeout. So it's a frightening thing for human beings who are used to ordering their world.
But again, that's what this mystery reminds us about. It's very frightening. It's very chaotic. It's not the way we are not in control when we enter that river of prayer. It's fast. It's going to bring us to places we don't imagine, but it's going to be right. Sparrow asks, really interestingly, are the mysteries like Jungian psychology dream work, where every character is an aspect of the self or the journey? Here's the answer. They can be.
Yeah.
They don't have to be.
Yep.
But that's a way that I love to play with the mysteries.
Yeah, there's so many different ways to read the mysteries. There's so many ways to visualize them, to imagine them. One thing I think that most of us can probably agree on, those of us anyway who've spent any time at all with the Rosary. If you're new to the Rosary, you'll be discovering this soon enough. But if you prayed the Rosary for a few months, even a few weeks, you probably noticed that the Rosary teases you into a dream state. It's just part of the natural rhythm of the prayers. You get a little drowsy. I'm always pleased when people write in and say, oh, am I screwing up? Because I keep falling asleep during the rosary. And I want to say, no, you're not screwing up. That's the point.
A hyper alert rosary somehow isn't even getting there. Like, let yourself go.
That's, if you're all hopped up on caffeine and, in your morning and starting your day, that's fine too, because certain kinds of insights will come from that state of mind. But the rosary is generally a kind of a sleepy, dreamy prayer, and especially when meditating on the mysteries, you're invited to dream. And sometimes you'll find yourself actually dreaming with your eyes open, like you'll actually
Yeah.
see things, you'll have visions, you'll hear things as you say them. You go, wow, where did that come from?
And this nativity scene has been drawn, imagined.
Mm.
People find it easy to imagine and reimagine the scene. I've seen beautiful versions. I'm sure some people have seen that painting of an immigrant couple coming across the border,
Oh yeah.
holding the baby in their
Mm.
arms and giving birth out there, you
Right,
know, on the desert, not sure where they're gonna if they're gonna make it or not.
right.
It is such a powerful mystery for us, and but it's not simple and it's not sentimental. It's really kind of wild when you get into it. And again, I just we circle back.
Well, it has a sentimental layer, but it's just the topmost layer to
Yeah.
it. There's so much more to it than that. There's so much underneath it.
How are we animals? If Mary gives birth in a stable, we are born among the animals. We are animals. And what does it mean? What do the animals have to teach
Mm.
us about
Well,
being
when we
animals?
were in Santa Fe this year, Laura Hutner found a little nativity scene, a Native
Oh,
American
yeah.
carved by a Navajo craftsman. Do you remember it? And all the characters were animals,
Were
but
they
I think they
bears?
were bears. I
They
think it
were
was a
very
bear
adorable.
nativity. All the characters I think were bears. The angels were bears. The wise men were bears. Very very small. The figures were only a couple of inches high.
And and children love this story, and children love to be told the story of birth, and we love to celebrate the birth. Going back to Sparrow said, and what way are the wise men? What gifts do we have to bring and to offer? What children do we need to recognize? What stars do we need to follow? What angels do we need to listen to and pay attention to? Because around us, everywhere, are children, and not just in the human world.
Hmm.
Because right now the birds are being born, baby chipmunks are being born, baby owls and the hawks and the
Woodchucks.
tadpoles. All around us, the nativity is unfolding at every moment.
Hmm.
And really, our child, how can we be the wise men who offer gifts rather than be Herod coming in trying to slaughter the innocents?
Hmm.
You know, because if we're going to be every character, we also have to be the bad guys too, and we
Hmm.
can't run away from that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, there's definitely a dark backstory to to this mystery. Yeah.
this is, I mean, we don't know what they were like. These were, we don't know how in danger they were. Um, it's a very, very around this nativity scene with that star shining down is a lot of darkness and a lot of fear. I mean, what was it like for that woman to be giving birth alone in that stable without her mother, without her midwife, without her friends? I mean, what fear she must have
Hmm.
felt. And yet, I sometimes, when I pray on Christmas Eve, I always pray the Rosary on Christmas Eve, and I've fallen into this habit of saying, send me back there to be with her. Let me be one of the midwives with her.
Hmm. Hmm.
I will be there with her. I will
Hmm.
come to her and I will hold her hand
Hmm.
and be with her.
Hmm.
And I feel sometimes how many women must have been there,
Hmm.
how many of ancestral mothers
It's
came to
as a
her.
mystery. I think you often say that Our Lady is, inviting us to be mothers. The last of her major utterances in the book, The Way of the Rose, is called an invitation. She's inviting us to be mothers, and I think this mystery is that kind of mystery where the child is there in the manger in this food trough, this wonder. In one very, very famous medieval painting, he's actually floating above it and he's
Mm.
surrounded by light, so there really is the sense that this is like the elevated host, right? This is something that's very sacred, this child. And we're invited to come close and to peer along with the animals and along with the wise men and the shepherds and the angels, right? And to marvel at that life and to cherish it, to protect it, to become mothers ourselves,
And to become
protect
a
that.
mother to her.
and to her and to her child, not Jesus, but life itself, to become mothers to the life of this planet.
How can we be mothers to the life on this planet? How do we bring it forth from within us? How do we, like Joseph, protect it and
Yeah,
midwife and defy patriarchy to protect it?
yeah.
How do we become midwives to the whole life on
I
this
keep
planet?
imagining that, Way of the Rose needs its own version of the Knights of Columbus, but our role is not to protect the Catholic Church, it's protect life. And not life as in like right to life,
Yeah,
but life
yeah.
as in animal life and plant life and lives of the forest and the trees, right? Stand for the earth and the rights of the earth, right? Rosary, we often say the rosary is a prayer for the earth to win.
For the earth to live.
If the earth wins and the earth lives, then we win and we lose. If
Live. We win and we
we
live.
win, we live. If we win, everyone loses, including us.
And so on that Christmas note, I know Allison Sharon posted it's certainly as cold as Christmas in our
Oh my
house tonight.
gosh.
It's maybe May Day, but we've had snow right up until this past week,
Yeah,
and
we
we've
had
got the
snow
wood
last
fire
week.
going. It is so cold here. Can I
Yeah,
tell
this
you?
is the coldest May Day, I think.
Oh my gosh. So anyway, do post your photos of your May Day. Ask your questions. We'll stay involved in the conversation. We'll get on board. And next week, Thursday, 7:15, we'll get to the next mystery. We're going to do this for 15 weeks.
Presentation, that's a really interesting
Oh,
one. Yeah.
next week, the presentation.
All
All
right,
right. Bye,
guys.
everyone.
Bye.